All right. I think this is right. Yes. Good. Okay. Let me know too. I've got the audio set up. Sorry. Okay. I've got the audio set up through OBS with a little bit of a delay because I was having a delay, and so I want to make sure that it's syncing up correctly with the video. So if you will let me know in the chat um, if it looks off or if it looks perfect. And while while we're doing that, I'm going to try to find. So it looks like Restream updated their layout and their user interface, which is cool, cool, super cool. But I don't see the chat section anymore. Wait a second. There it is. Okay, I found it. Because I definitely wanted to be able to chat with folks. Cool. So, all right. So if the audio looks good or if it's off, either way, just let me know in the chat. Set my mind at ease, and we're going to jump right into it because I'm already running like 4 minutes late. Um, so I wanted to do this live stream today, focused on launching a podcast. This is something I've been thinking about for a long time. If you've followed me on social media, I guess like for the past 5 years or more, you know that I have been very heavily involved in podcasting. That's really where I spent a lot more of my time before I really started getting into video. So I feel really at home when it comes to talking into a microphone, podcasting, and it's something that I've missed a lot. I stopped doing the I had well I'll go through the whole history with you because I'm going to tell the story about like how I came into it and some of the things that I did. But the last podcast that I was a part of, seriously, because I had a couple of like little spurts here and there. But the last podcast I was a part of, seriously, we recorded our last episode probably something like 4 years ago, maybe even longer than that, 5 years ago, and we haven't picked it up since. So I'm really excited to get back into it. Um, so before I jump in, I want to go ahead and address the chat. I want to say hi to Corey. Corey, thanks for tuning in and watching. Anita, it's great to see you. And then we've got Learn Swift UI. It's good to see you. It doesn't tell me your actual name, but I'll just call you Learn. Is Learn, wait, is Learn your name? Lerne? I mean, that would be super cool. So anyway, thank you so much for tuning in. And on this channel, I'm really I'm still in the middle of figuring out exactly what kind of content I want to share. And I've I've spent a lot of time just trying to like going back and forth between, do I want to just do creative content? I really love the idea of doing kind of um, investigative, like research based content around specific topics. Like that would be fun. I love vlogging. And I also like teaching people. I love doing educational stuff. And what I keep coming back to as kind of like what I feel like my strong suit is, what I really should be doing on this channel, has to do with educating and encouraging um, creators who specifically are trying to use video to grow their audience, to make money, and to connect with other people. And so that's where I feel like my focus is, and that still feels really broad. Um, so I want to share with you some of the. I just came up with a bunch of different categories of like topics that I'd like to discuss, and there were like 8 of them. There's creator lifestyle that has to do with like motivation, getting unstuck, imposter syndrome, those kind of things, work-life balance, encouragement and affirmation, because I know that as a creator, sometimes we just need a little bit of encouragement to be reminded that our voice matters and that we have knowledge and a message worth sharing. Video tips, filming tips, those are two separate things because I'm thinking about like video setup and then filming, as in like now the camera's on, how do you talk to the camera? How do you address people? How do you make content that's interesting? Video creator tips. So this is like coming up with topic ideas, building a community around your YouTube channel, that kind of thing. Editing tips. So once everything is actually filmed, like how do you edit faster? What are the differences between the editing programs and tools that you can use? YouTube tips. So like diving into analytics. I currently am running a YouTube channel for Podia, which is where I work. And I've grown that channel in a little more than 2 years from about 500 subscribers to more than 20,000 subscribers and still growing. And so I've gained a lot of insights from my time working on that YouTube channel and some of the things that I understand, strategies behind the scenes. So like I can bring some of that here too. And then there's still going to be the occasional creative project, collaboration. So why am I telling you all of this? Well, as I was sitting down writing all of this stuff, I realized, this still, it doesn't allow me to focus the way that I would really like to. It doesn't allow me to, as far as my YouTube content is concerned, it doesn't allow me to position myself in a more specific niche. And I've known for a long time that when it comes to building an audience, growing a community, connecting with people, um, especially in the beginning, like as people get to know who you are and you gain a little bit more notoriety, you have room to kind of branch out and do other things, and your name, your personality becomes the pull, it becomes the differentiator. But at first, it really helps to get as specific as possible. And as someone who struggles so much with that, like I want to do so many different things, any opportunity I can take to get a little bit more specific, I think is going to be beneficial, not just to me, but to the people that I want to serve. I can't really help people if I'm not reaching them, and it's easier to reach people when I'm being a little bit more specific with my YouTube content. So, when I look at all of those different categories, I see two kind of groupings. There's the stuff that has specifically to do with video production and YouTube. And I feel like that's still a really broad niche. But I'm serving creators. I'm coming kind of from my own experience. So, like an at home sort of setup in your home studio and working with those kind of constraints. So, I feel like there are some opportunities there to still be pretty specific. And then the other grouping I'm seeing is stuff that has more to do with like I said, creator lifestyle, motivation, um, encouragement and affirmation and that kind of thing. And that's also super important to me. It's something that I really care about. I really care about being an encouraging and motivating voice for creators. It's really important to me that the work that I do on some level brings new things into the world that might not have otherwise been there. So like somebody watching one of my videos or listening to one of my podcasts or reading one of my tweets or whatever, if something that I say unlocks something for them that makes it possible for them to create their thing, it's a good feeling for me because it's like, oh, I was just a small part of making that happen. And so I really care about that. And so what I've decided I'm going to do is I'm going to reserve that kind of content for a podcast. But it will also kind of live on this channel, and I'll explain what that looks like. So let me tell you the story about how I got started with podcasting. I was at Disney World in, I think it was 2014. Let me rewind a little bit. So I was in a band and played music, um, loved uh, writing music, performing, recording, like the whole thing. It was super fun. But what also came with that is you had to kind of run it like a business. And that part I wasn't so great at. And as my family grew, we eventually kind of had to scale back things with the band because it's hard to manage kids and making sure that they're taken care of when you're out playing gigs until, 10 o'clock at night or midnight. And so it just kind of became a little bit incompatible, a little bit more and more difficult as time went on until we kind of had to set that aside. And so I took what little business experience I had trying to run the band and decided, okay, I'm gonna do some other creative stuff. I was into web design and development, graphic design. I was doing logo work, and so I was trying to, as a freelancer, build my own business and work through some stuff. And I I just happened to catch that my friend, my good friend who had been in the band with me, his name is Sean McCabe, was starting a podcast about business and creativity. And I thought, well, that's super cool. I'll check it out. I want to support him. He had actually left the band a little bit sooner than we, wound down, and he set off and started his own business ventures. He had a computer repair business he that was successful. He had a web design business that was successful. He got into hand lettering, drawing letters. He made that successful and made a really good living off of that. So he had all of this great experience and decided he was going to start sharing it on a podcast. Around that same time, I just started listening to other podcasts, one called Back to Work that has to do with productivity and getting things done, some other really good ones. And this kind of thinking back on it now, I remember feeling like, oh, there's so many podcasts. There's so many different, like, how do you choose which ones to listen to? But looking back on it now, it feels like that was kind of the dawn, the emergence of what we know now as modern day podcasting. And podcasting it's grown in so many ways, and it's become this huge thing. And at the same time, like even today, it still feels like something new and exciting. So so I started listening to Sean's podcast. It was called the Sean West Podcast. And I remember getting to, I think it was episode 23, and hearing that the co-host who had started the podcast with them was going to have to step down. They decided they were going to go off and do some other stuff, and I was like, oh wow, okay. Um, Up to that point, I'd actually been meeting with Sean maybe like once a week, once every other week, just talking to him about business and creativity and kind of my own struggles as an entrepreneur and things that I was trying to do with my business. And and we were having just really great conversations, like old friends who had done music together, and now like we're kind of jamming on this other creative stuff, and it was just fun. But he was also mentoring me a lot. He was sharing a lot of his knowledge, and so I I got to kind of establish that new sort of relationship with Sean through those meetings. And so let's go back to Disney. So I was at Disney World with my family. I had just finished writing the what is it, Thunder Mountain Railroad. That's what it was. And I got a message from Sean, and so I checked it, listened, and he asked me if I wanted to come join him and co-host the Sean West podcast since his previous host had stepped down. And so I messaged him back and said, "Yeah, I'd love to. Let's do it." And that was how I got started with podcasting. I had no real previous experience. I had a lot of experience, speaking to people from a stage, obviously using a microphone as a singer in a band, but not in the capacity of like actually sitting down and having these conversations. And so I was kind of thrown into this. We were doing two a week at the time, so we were recording I think it was every Monday and Wednesday, if I'm remembering correctly. So it was a lot, and over a short period of time, over a relatively short period of time, we crossed the 100 episode mark, and we were just going in it, and a community was starting to grow around the Sean West podcast. We got to have live interaction with people as we were having these conversations about business and creativity, and it was super fun. Like I was like, wow, I if I had known how much fun this was going to be, I would have gotten into podcasting sooner. Um, Around that time, Sean was going to kind of expand and wanted his podcasting brand to be kind of a network. So there were other shows, other people who were kind of involved. There was a show called Behind the Brand that had to do with looking at, you know, everything from big brands to small brands and kind of deconstructing their branding strategy and that kind of thing. There was a podcast about podcasting that was hosted by Sean's original co host. He came back and decided to do that. And then my wife Rachel and I started a show on his network called In the Boat with Ben. And that show was focused a lot around the the struggle of being an entrepreneur and a creator in the context of having a family and all of the responsibilities that come with that. And so a lot of those episodes kind of ended up being around family dynamics. And then we also talked about trying to balance creativity and family life. And so it was really great. And so like when I think back to that time, I was doing two shows a week on the Sean West podcast, one show a week for In the Boat with Ben, and that was even doing 3 episodes every week. I was already thinking, man, what else could I do? Like I would love to. I had a friend who was really into comedy and wanted to be a comedian himself, but also like was interested in the craft of comedy. And I thought it would be super fun to have a podcast just talking about the art form of comedy and how comedians come up with their jokes, their writing process, their discovery process, and that kind of thing. I thought it would be really fun to have a show where I talked about movies and TV series and kind of like, had fun conversations around, and especially, gosh, nowadays, like that would be super fun with all the amazing streaming content that's available now. Um, but, but then things started to kind of slow down a little bit. I had to stop doing the In the Boat with Ben podcast. We tried to relaunch that a couple of times and it just didn't work out. The Sean West podcast slowed down to once a week, and then eventually I stopped recording that podcast. This was, well, actually, it was around the time the pandemic hit, and it was kind of the same thing that happened with the band. It was just this sort of slow fade. That season just kind of slowly came to a close, and I found myself, still doing things that I really enjoyed creatively and really busy with those things, but they were just that none of them were podcast related. I did launch I launched a really short-lived podcast with my brother called Jump the Creek, and I'm still, hold on just a second. I've got a visitor. No, it's okay. What's up, buddy?
Can you unlock that computer downstairs?
I cannot right now, but I will as soon as I'm done. Do you mind shutting the door on your way out and asking your brothers to be a little bit quieter if they're going to be upstairs?
Mm-hmm.
Thanks. All right. So where was, oh yeah, so my brother and I, we did 6 episodes of this show that was a nostalgic look at the past where we talked about our childhood. We actually had a pretty interesting childhood. We lived in California and then moved to Colorado. Colorado. I, I they always my wife always gives me a hard time for how I pronounce that. Moved to Texas, but we lived, like out in the country in the sticks and had 20 acres of land. The small town in Texas, the California experience was really unique, surrounded by our families and stuff. We were sent on trips on Greyhound buses, just the two of us, by ourselves when we were like 9 and 12 years old, something like this. So like a lot of fun experiences to kind of look back on, and then how we bring those lessons to the future. Like it's a fun concept. Um, we're just still trying to we're still trying to work out the logistics of making it happen consistently. So, anyways, all that to say, I've never lost the itch for wanting to have a podcast. And so as I was going through the different categories and the things that I would like to share on this channel, and I saw that grouping, I realized, hey, this is an opportunity. I've been thinking that I want to get back into podcasting, and I want to make sure that I'm being as focused as possible with my YouTube content, but I don't want to not have an outlet for some of these other things that I would like to talk about. So let's get a podcast going. And what I'm excited to share is that this is not just going to be like I'm coming up with a whole new thing. What makes a lot of sense for me, because I already own the name, I've already published some episodes under this name. Some people are already familiar with it and, would recognize it if I brought it back. I'm going to call the podcast In the Boat with Ben. And I'm mostly going to do just me talking into a microphone, talking about a specific topic. But I may from time to time have a guest. I may from time to time invite Rachel to join me in those conversations, because she is also very much in my same situation. A creator who is trying to grow an audience, grow their business, and balancing that with family life. So, so yeah, In the Boat with Ben is coming back, and I'm going to start recording new episodes of In the Boat with Ben next Friday. Am I right about that? Let me make sure. I'm going to check and see. I actually created a whole publishing schedule and stuff. Yep. Next Friday, I'm going to record my first episode. Now, I did mention that it was still going to live on this channel and that I would explain what that meant. So one of the things I've been hearing and kind of encouraged by is how powerful and impactful having long form live content can be. I've been wanting to on this channel, I've been wanting to build community and connect with people, have more interaction with people, and live content is the best way to do that. Um, so when I record the podcast on Fridays, I'm going to live stream that recording on this channel. And my plan is for that to be from 4 p.m. Central Time until about 5 p.m. Central Time or whenever we finish. But I don't want to go more than about 45 minutes for the actual content of the podcast and no more than about an hour for any, time that we spend before or after having the live experience. But I feel like that having the live experience is going to allow this content to live on my YouTube channel without it being a part of my regular content uploads. So it won't be as disorienting, I think, for people who are looking to subscribe to my channel. It's a good tangential fit to the main topics that I'll be covering in my other content. It's a way to interact live with people who are subscribed to the channel and who watch these live videos. People who subscribe to the podcast, like I can let them know, hey, I'm recording these live every Friday from this time to this time. You can catch it on YouTube and you can actually interact live. You can ask questions. I loved that was something I loved so much about being a part of the Sean West podcast was that live interactive experience. And so that's another thing that I'm really looking forward to here. Just getting questions and comments and stuff and being able to bring those into the show and have those kind of enhance the value of what I'm providing. Uh, so I think that brings us to today. Today I sat down and decided, okay, I'm going to hash all of this out. So I actually have written down some ideas, some thoughts, and I want to share them with you to let you know this is kind of the direction I'm going to be going with the In the Boat with Ben podcast. So the topics that I'm going to cover have to do with creator lifestyle, work-life balance, and encouragement and affirmation for creators. My target audience is creators and entrepreneurs who work from home, maybe have families, have part-time or full-time jobs. So maybe they work like remotely from home, but they're doing something on the side. And what I've described basically is myself and why I'm trying to reach myself has very much to do with the approach that I'm taking to this podcast. It's going to be somewhat prescriptive, but mostly just me sharing the things that I'm trying to do as a creator slash entrepreneur who works from home, has a family, works remote full time for another company, and is trying to build something of my own on the side. So it's really just me kind of talking to myself, me kind of sharing from my own experiences. The tagline for this podcast will be, and this is all subject to change, but this is where I am right now. So the tagline is going to be live a creative, productive, and balanced life. And then that seems like that seems like a really big promise, but that's kind of the goal. Like I want to I want to maximize the amount of time that I am feeling creative, that my creative juices are flowing, that ideas are kind of coming to me, that I'm feeling inspired. And I when I'm feeling creative, like when those ideas are coming to me, I want to have the discipline that I need or the structure in place that I need to be productive so that I can take those ideas and that creativity and actually put it out into the world. And I want that to be in balance with other parts of my life. I want my work to be in balance with my family and friend relationships and with, taking care of myself, because I feel like all of those things serve one another. And when I'm not taking care of myself, my creativity suffers and my family suffers. And all of those things kind of work together. So that's the goal. That's the destination. This podcast is the journey. So here's the description that I've come up with for that. Wish you could wave a magic wand and have boundless creativity and supernatural productivity, all while maintaining healthy balance between your work, your relationships, and your personal. Oh, I messed up. I'm going to start over. There we go. Okay. Do you wish you could wave a magic wand and have boundless creativity and supernatural productivity, all while maintaining a healthy balance between your work, your relationships, and your personal well being? Okay, so this podcast is less like a magic wand and more like a voyage on uncharted seas. But as with any journey, the best insights and breakthroughs are discovered once you decide to set sail. Join YouTuber and videopreneur. I don't know if I like that word. Join YouTuber and videopreneur Ben Tolson each week for an honest exploration of creativity and entrepreneurship that seeks to live a more creative, productive, and balanced life. So that's what In the Boat with Ben is going to be about. I'm inviting you to come into the boat with me. Um, let's have a boat party. I don't know. That's not a thing. What's also kind of ironic, uh, and this wasn't lost on me, back in the days when I started the original In the Boat with Ben podcast, is I've I've only been on a couple of boats, never in charge of actually making them travel on the water. So I know zero about sailing or about navigating ocean waters or, like any of that stuff. So, but it's such a great metaphor. It's so great because, the sea, like life, can be so unpredictable and it can be so rough and choppy. And then there are other times when it can be really smooth and beautiful. Um, and so I feel like it's such an amazing metaphor. And so, I'm gonna, despite my lack of actual experience with boats, I'm gonna use it in the boat with Ben. All right. I'm going to go to the comments real quick and then I'm going to wrap this up. So Anita says, "That sounds great, Ben. I am in a state of creative discovery. It doesn't prove to be great for analytics, but I'm enjoying myself. That is my focus for now." And Anita, I'm right there with you too. I have actually, in the past couple of weeks, well, so I started uploading weekly videos, made a commitment to do that for 2 years straight, weekly videos without fail. And that's either like a live stream, which having the In the Boat with Ben podcast live streamed on YouTube is going to help me make that commitment. Um, but in that time, I grew by a few subscribers. And then, like, in the past couple of weeks, I lost a subscriber. And the last video that I uploaded, which I thought was really, it's exactly the kind of content that fits into what I've outlined for myself, and that kind of that focused, like, it got fewer views than any of my other stuff. And I was like, oh, okay. Um, but I'm not I'm not focused on that right now. I'm focused on building that consistency and just building that muscle of showing up every single week and making sure that there's always something new on my channel, because the focus will come. Like the growth and the audience building and the community, like that stuff will come as I'm committed to being consistent and showing up. So that's where I am right now too. So that's Awesome, Anita. I wish you well as you continue to discover what you want to do creatively with your channel. And then Anita says, I also like water with Ben. That's a good one too. I love that metaphor of like water. It's kind of a different visual from uh, it's kind of a different visual from like the ocean and kind of the choppy versus calm seas. But like how water just goes with the flow, right? Um, can be disturbed a little bit, but is still kind of keeps its shape. So it's very cool. Meg says, I'm so excited for your podcast, Ben. I loved your perspective on the Sean West podcast. That means a lot. Thank you, Meg. On the Sean West podcast, you know, Sean is very principled, and that was kind of his approach to entrepreneurship. And his belief, his conviction was that there are there are principles that you should follow and and never um, never break from, even if it means that you uh, don't get to work with a certain client or something like that. Like his approach was always about long-term success, very long-term thinking. Um, but it also sometimes, I think, made for a little bit of a rigidity that was kind of difficult, I think, especially for people who are like me. I'm very much kind of a gray area, like, you know, just assessing things from situation to situation kind of person. And I think long term, but I'm also thinking about like, yeah, we do have these rules and we do have these principles, and it's good to think long term, but what if this specific situation doesn't, what if those things don't serve us as well in this specific situation and keeps us from making a connection that we might want to make? And so I kind of, I, I was the other side of the coin, and I think that that worked really well. So, uh, so yeah, I want to bring those same sensibilities. It's going to be, it's very much going to be a place where creators can come and listen and hopefully just leave feeling encouraged and empowered and, have clarity, and also just realize that they're not alone in what they're going through and working toward, that there are other people who are in the same on the same journey as them, in the same boat with them. So, all right, well, I really appreciate you taking the time to watch this. I'm so excited. Again, we're going to go live with the first In the Boat with Ben episode next Friday, which I believe is the 29th. Let me check that real quick. Sorry, the 28th. Oh, right, because, yeah, okay. So next Friday, the 28th, 4 p.m. Central Time, In the Boat with Ben relaunched, where it's going to be episode one. We're kind of going to start over. And I am going to talk about, in that first episode, I will share a little bit about our previous content library and where that's going to live, because it was some really good stuff and I want it to still be available for folks. But episode one, next Friday, 4 p.m. You can watch it live here on this channel. And soon, uh, on listening, you can listen to it in your favorite podcasting app, just searching up In the Boat with Ben. All right. Well, that is going to do it for me today. Again, thanks for watching, and thanks for being here, for asking questions and sharing your comments. And I will see you next week.